Most venture capital companies, when they'll turn you down, they don't expect to hear from you again. Like, who actually does what they say, It's probably like 1% of the people or something. That was kind of interesting in their minds. Like, it kind of proved that I was committed to the thing so much that even though I couldn't get an investment, I would invest my own time and money and actually do the work that they were suggesting.
Well, welcome to the Jumpstart podcast with Jeffalytics. I'm your host, Jeff Sauer. Today, for our 18th episode, we talk with Larry Kim, the founder of WordStream and one of the most prolific bloggers that I've ever seen. Seriously, this guy has been in beast mode for what seems like years. And yes, that's the first time I've ever used beast mode in the podcast. But if you've been in the online marketing game for any time at all now, you've probably seen Larry Kim's posts from the WordStream blog, LinkedIn, search engine land. He's pretty much everywhere. And if not, you're missing out. And maybe after listening to today's episode, you'll come up with some ideas and you'll be able to see some of Larry's posts. I've learned a lot from Larry over the years, and I find his insights on both the industry and entrepreneurship to be very insightful. And it was great to see all of this come across during our podcast episode today. This episode is being released while I'm on a train to Verona in Italy and was recorded during my recent visit to Minneapolis. It was freezing cold outside, but I got fired up hearing about Larry's entrepreneurial spirit. Before we get to Larry, let's have a word from our sponsor, ppccourse.com. So back in 2015, which doesn't seem like that long ago now, and isn't that long ago, I released an online course that teaches you Google AdWords. One of the tools we recommend using for management of your PPC campaigns is WordStream, which is actually coincidentally founded by our guest, Larry Kim. Tools for PPC are awesome, but it's important to have the fundamentals down as well. Our course is the perfect complement because you have the knowledge and the skills that you need in order to make the most out of the tools that are available to you. You can learn more at ppccourse.com. Now it's time to talk with Larry Kim. For show notes, visit jeffalytics.com/Larry. Okay, we're here today with Larry Kim. Larry, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, it's really exciting to talk to you. I think we've had some side conversations and I've learned a little bit about your journey, but I want to hear it straight from you as to how you got into this wonderful world of marketing. And so let's start with do you have a particular project that you worked on or an experience you had that made you say marketing is something that I want to get into?
So I think it was maybe a decade ago. I was actually in the software business, and the software company that I was working for needed somebody to help them set up some Google AdWords campaigns. And, so I never studied marketing, actually. My background's electrical engineering, but it was very interesting because this kind of marketing was kind of a more technical marketing. It wasn't so much branding and all the conventional marketing stuff that you would think of marketing. So I just set up some campaigns and keywords and bids. And within, a week or so, this thing was generating like millions of dollars of revenue. And I thought that was very, very eye-opening in terms of being introduced to the power of search marketing and how powerful it was. And so basically a side project that some company just asked me to help out with kind of really got me hooked and excited for the field. Yeah,
it's great. You get the exposure, get to see millions of dollars coming in, and I can see how that can hook you, especially, as you said, it tells you about the technical piece of marketing, or basically we all assume that marketing means one thing. I had an assumption of what marketing was, and then you get into it and you realize this is actually more of a sometimes computer or data problem and not so much, not the type of problem you might have thought you're solving with marketing.
Right. So basically, the key thing that I did, and this was like a kind of a big deal, 10 years ago, I wrote a program that scraped through the web server log files for this company to find all the referring query strings, and then I uploaded something like 10 million keywords into the AdWords system. This is kind of non-obvious at the time. I know it became a thing later on, but that was generating like tons and tons of clicks and revenue for the company at the time, and just kind of taking a computer approach to doing this marketing stuff.
Yeah, so you use your technical skills and your background, and then we're able to create the script that made that happen. And I'd assume that at that time, cost per clicks were reasonable enough that just by being out there might have been enough, or was that a problem? Was there a lot of inefficiency there, or how did that part work? Because I know that there's obviously, I think your business now focuses on the efficiency of what you're doing.
Those were the golden days. It was kind of a new thing. We're talking, AdWords is 15 years old now. I was actually their biggest advertiser for a year, spending a whopping $1.2 million. Now these days, if you spend $1.2 million a year on AdWords, they won't even return your calls.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a big deal back then. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So $1.2 million, and you said it was tens of thousands of keywords or more than that was involved with that?
Yeah, it was two things. It was millions of keywords. Plus, I was also figuring out what page on the website they were going to organically. So, like, I would send them to like the right page on our site, if you will, using just some clever programming. So the combination of those two things, generated tons and tons of clicks and high quality scores and very very low cost per clicks, etc. And the really neat thing about a software business, like this was a desktop software business, you don't have any incremental costs for your product. Like, so if all the cost goes up front into building this software, okay, that people download, and then if you can just sell one more copy, you're not really incurring much more expense. You know what I mean? It's just kind of, you're just trying to sell as many as you can. So basically what I'm saying is the margins were very good in terms of like the incremental margins from selling more. So like it was a perfect business model for this internet marketing kind of scale, and they were doing like millions of dollars in sales every month. And I was like, I should probably do something like this.
And obviously with your training, you had the confidence that whatever you built out is something that would scale, and you had the background that could be able to do that. I think that a lot of people recognize inefficiencies, but it's like if you can't do something about it or create a product, then maybe it's hard to turn that into a business. But you had those skills.
Usually, I find that the people have like these founders have two skills. It doesn't matter what they are, but they need to be like bridging two different skill sets. Programming and marketing, for example, or medical sciences and engineering. Generally, it doesn't hurt to have an extra skill, especially if it's like something practical that where you can actually build something like on your own without requiring much investment.
Yeah, you're saying like on the intersection between these two things, because starting a business just doing writing code without a purpose is one thing, but being able to write code to do better marketing is really what you need in order to turn it into a business.
Pretty much, yeah.
So did this become WordStream, or how does the progression happen in the process you went through?
So I was a man on a mission, wanting to create something big and make tons of money and blah, 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 all those stupid ideas in your head. But basically, I didn't have an idea. You know what I mean? Like, I just, all I knew was like, wow, this is very powerful. I should probably do something with this. But I didn't have a specific kind of plan on how to monetize this. And so originally, the first idea was to quit my job and be a search engine marketing consultant. Okay, so that's kind of like what your listeners do, like some form of internet marketing. In this case, it was just like a sole proprietorship, so it was just myself with no employees.
Yep.
And business was good. I mean, this was 10 years ago. It wasn't that competitive in terms of there weren't tons of search marketing consultants. The skill was pretty novel. You know what I mean? It was like magic. So I could charge decent rates. Geez, like $10,000 a client per month. It was ridiculous, actually. You can't really do that anymore. But the point is, it was very new, so I was able to get some clients and generating some cash flow. It was not bad. It was like 40 or 50,000 a month in cash coming in terms of having a dozen or so clients, and I did what most kind of early 20-year-old kid would do with that kind of windfall. I was just kind of treating it like a piggy bank, like, wow, I was like poor all these years and now I can like, I don't know, buy a car or a house or something. Like, I wasn't really treating it very seriously. In terms of a business, like if you're going to have a business, you have to kind of invest in the company. You can't just treat it like a piggy bank. You have to like invest in marketing and an office and sales and a team and building products. So I would say the first 12 or so months I was just kind of joking around and like, whoa, life is great. Somewhere along the way I started writing some software programs. So just because I'm lazy, I don't like to do the same stupid things over and over. So I wrote some software programs to automate a lot of the work that I was doing for these clients, so that instead of having 8 clients, I could have maybe 10 or 12 clients. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then, so I was doing all this work. The customers thought I was doing it all manually, but actually I was just using my own programs to make it go faster. All that keyword researching and grouping and ad copy creation and landing page kind of identification, all that stuff that you do manually. It was all automated, and then somewhere along the way, I was like, wait a minute, I wonder if this could actually be the thing. Like the actual business could be like a search marketing software company.
Yep. Instead of using the software to aid your services, it's like, can the software be its own standalone product or a service, whatever you want to call it?
it's kind of like I don't know, the side project becomes the the full thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've definitely been there. I think a lot of people end up seeing that as like the side project, this way to do things more efficiently ends up becoming more important than the original thing you were doing.
So that was the original idea. This is my first startup for like it's a venture-backed startup. I've raised $30 million or so of capital, and along the way, I've been doing this for about 7 years. But basically, the software is incredibly expensive to create, like at scale. Like to have, it's like building a railroad, or a subway system. You need to build all the infrastructure, and then you're charging $1 admission fee tickets. You see what I'm saying? It's like all the cost is up front, and
Yep.
and you get the revenue kind of slowly over time. So you usually need a considerable amount of investment, especially in a hot field where there's competitors, that are going after the same market as you.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of pitched a couple of venture capital people in the area. It was kind of a joke. It was like, I don't even know these people. I was just sending it to their general inboxes and trying to guess email addresses, like initial last name at venturecompany.com. I just literally sent out about 400 or 500 of these blind pitches to people that I didn't know. Got maybe I say a dozen or so meetings, and they all said no. So that was kind of interesting because that was my first kind of experience in the venture world. The reason why they said no was because there wasn't a business here. It was just one guy with a couple ideas, and
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean. Like it wasn't really in an investable form. They needed like a team with customers and a product, and patents and all of the things that people view of as a regular company. You know what I mean?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting because on one hand it was a rejection, but on the other hand it was kind of a roadmap. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of told me all the things that I needed to do, and so yes, I spent the next year. Remember, I had revenues coming in. It wasn't like I had a service that I was doing. So during the daytime, I could do the service work, generate some cash, and using the money. I can bootstrap the business. Bootstrapping, of course, means kind of like you need money to make money. So you just investing in the business with the money that you're generating to like
Mm-hmm.
hire engineers, marketers, salespeople. Eventually it got to a size of like 6 or 7 people, and the salesperson closing deals, getting actual customers to use the software, engineers building the software so that like I can get some help here, that kind of stuff. A marketer building a website, making it look more professional as opposed to just like a one-man show. Like
Yep.
literally we were working out of a Panera Bread. It's kind of a joke. Just unlimited free refills of Diet Coke and free Wi-Fi kind of thing. We then, after a year of doing that, made tremendous progress, and just hit up those same people again and said, hey, remember you sent me that email that said that there's these 10 things that why you won't invest? Well, I actually spent some of my own money to figure out those issues, and would you be interested in follow-up? And I think that was very interesting because I think most venture capital companies, when they'll turn you down, they don't expect to hear from you again. Like who actually does what they say, is probably like 1% of the people or something like that. So that was kind of interesting in their minds. Like it kind of proved that I was committed to the thing so much that even though I couldn't get an investment, I would invest my own time and money and actually do the work that they were suggesting. That was pretty compelling. And I got 2 offers for a Series A investment. That's like your first institutional money into a company. They just use a letter A, and then every time you take money, they increment the letter to B, C, D, or whatever. But basically, it was a $4 million offer for a piece of the company, and that was kind of how it got started.
Excellent, and that's really fascinating. I mean, basically, it's a few things that we talk about as marketers, sort of coming into life. One is optimization, right? So we always use the word optimization as marketers to talk about the making something better. But really what you're doing the same thing, right? You're taking the feedback around the business and you're saying, how do I make this better? How do I make this more sustainable in the long term? How do I make this into something that isn't just good for me and my 8 to 12 clients or however many clients you have, but this is like, how do I do this into the future? How do I turn this into a long-term business? And it's both listening to the feedback from your clients, but also listening to the people who might invest in everything. And you combine it all, and now you have a real, business that you have. Obviously, I think that a lot of businesses start the way you're talking about, where they are in a Panera Bread, or some kind of place using the Wi-Fi. I know a lot of people work from coffee shops, that type of stuff, until it becomes more tangible. And then once you can get that tangible piece of it like you have, then things just start to spread like crazy.
Jeff, the thing that I learned from this experience is the power of just projection. Okay, like WordStream today is managing over $500 million of ad spend. That's 1% of Google's total revenues. All right, so every dollar that Google makes, 1 penny is managed by WordStream. We've got over 10,000 customers, employing over 200 people. Sad to say, I don't even know everyone who works here. It's crazy. We used to all fit in a Panera Bread. It's mind blowing. But back it up a couple years to when it was nothing. Like it was just me all by my lonesome working by myself. And so basically the thing what I learned is the power of projection. So like I just need to convince people that there's something here, okay? And if I can convince people that there's something there, that they will believe in this vision and will join me for this ride. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And if I can then convince people that there's a vision here and there's a business here, I can get people to invest millions and millions of dollars into this company, even though the company isn't worth that much at present. But what we're saying is that given that money, we can then create the vision. It's kind of like wow, it's like Inception or something. Like it's like the company isn't worth anything or not much without the money, but they're putting in the money because they believe that it will be worth that much. And what's required is just this notion of like convincing people of this grand vision for your company. So just projecting something great. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I know that's exactly what I've noticed that as well. It doesn't have to necessarily be in. I mean, it is in the startup world for sure. If you want to get capital, they need to be able to see the way they're going to get 10 times plus return on their money, right? If they're not going to have the potential for that, they're not going to want to invest. But it comes all the way down to even just sitting in a marketing planning meeting and talking to other people and saying, "Here's what I think we can do." People don't want to get on board for saying we're going to do more of the same or we're going to be average. People don't want to go after that. They're not going to invest their time because it's infinitely more work to be involved with something that it isn't. So saying no is the default answer we see in most cases, whether it's raising capital or trying to raise a budget to get people, for marketing. And we need to give somebody a reason to say yes. And so, like you said, the power of projection, getting somebody to buy into what you're doing here. And were you able to, are you matching the projections you have? Is it above what you thought, lower than what you thought? How is that part playing together?
Things are going great here. WordStream is among the top 500 fastest privately held growing companies in America for 3 or 4 years now, according to Inc. magazine. We actually grew over 100% last year, which is a remarkable rate. And so the company is profitable. We are generating tons of money. It took a little while to get there, maybe 2 years longer than I thought it would. But give me a break. Like those early stage projections that you create in your pitch decks for, your first VC money. I mean, do you really know what you're doing?
Yeah.
No, it's just like a placeholder. It's like I don't think anyone was really expecting that to be perfectly accurate. But yeah, I think you just mentioned like VCs wanting to get a 10x return and all this thing. When I set out to create this company, the promise that I made to my investors was, we're going to create like $100 million company, and I think we're there.
Excellent. So you made it to the point where you're hitting the projections that you had out there. And I would agree that most people don't. They're not. It's like a news story predicting something. Nobody's going to go back and like read the news stories to see who was right at all times. Basically, it's that you have the vision, right? That's what people are buying into, the idea that you can make it to this point. And if you get there 2 years later, it's still a much better opportunity than going after somebody who's not going to go for it. Because that vision and that idea behind I can grow this company to $100 million is really the type of person that they'd want to put their money into.
Oh, for sure. And entrepreneurs, if you are successful in creating something, and by the way, it just to set expectations, it usually doesn't work. So don't be surprised, if things don't work out. But if you are fortunate to, or if you are successful in kind of building and growing something, that the fact that you made tons of money for you and your investors, that'll greatly help you later in your career. Like if you want to create another business, because uh, you know these investors get pitched, call it 100 times a quarter. How many of them have actually, had success and made money for investors in the past? Probably like one or two of them. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
so there's tremendous the way I look at it is you kind of have to go through this process like a few times. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. And it's funny because obviously we're talking about raising capital, but I think that I wonder how much of what you've done was aided or helped by the fact that you had to go out and project the value of AdWords. You needed to project the value of marketing in general, because I think that it works on a similar process. And that is, I need a budget, which a budget might be the same as raising capital. Probably easier to get a budget than it is to raise capital. And you probably have a much better chance at success using a marketing budget. But I think that the skills and the discipline that goes behind it is pretty similar. We have these inputs that we have here, and we have the market conditions. We have where we think things are going. Here's what I think we can do with this additional marketing budget. Does what you learned here or what you're doing here, did any of it come from the process of managing paid search spend?
If you were to look at my early pitch decks, they were very data driven. It was like, we're going to get this many. I mean, it looked just like a conversion path analysis for a PPC campaign. It was like, we're going to get this many visitors at this conversion rate, at this cost per click, and we're going to convert them to trials and this percent. It was basically a big funnel. Was what I was pitching. And showing how that would turn into revenues. And I think, yeah, absolutely. It looked like a marketing campaign, basically, but at a company-wide scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just seeing what you're doing in the market right now as Larry, an individual, as well as with your company, I think that you're executing on it. I think that's the one thing is a lot of people say, oh, we're going to create a beautiful marketing funnel. We have all these different inputs here, but then it usually just goes towards one thing. It's not nearly as distributed. It's just different what ends up being executed versus what is out there. How do you stay on track with that? How do you guide the business? Is it just more, you just outwork the other people? Is it the team that you have? Is it all that, or how does that work?
Well, it's definitely, definitely hustle. Like, I mean, I was up at 4:30 this morning and got into the office at around 5:45. So I don't know if everyone's doing that. So hustle is pretty important. Team is also important. Have a lot of great business partners, investors. Like there's no part of this business other than the thought leadership component that requires my attention. It's all like, in the capable hands of capable managers. That's a critical element of scale. I think, like, if you're talking to like internet marketers, a lot of times like they really struggle with scaling because like they have to be the person who does something.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But somehow I've just been able to find the right people who can like run sales or client services or product or engineering, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and that's obviously critical that you have people that can do those components so you can focus on what you're best at and what you want to do as well.
Yeah, I think, a really great characteristic, it's funny, I was talking about hustle, but it's also laziness. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be a little bit lazy to outsource all those functions to people who are smarter than you. I can't explain it.
Interesting. Laziness is the key to success. But I hear what you're saying. I know that I don't want to misquote you. I know that that's not exactly what you're saying, but I think that I get what you mean is that you need to be able to remove yourself from the things that you either are good at, but you know that it's not the best use of your time or your passion point, or that you're just not good at, or you don't want to focus on.
Remember, the genesis of this entire business was just, I didn't want to do the same dumb things over and over again. So I wrote some programs to do that. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like laziness or just not, or you could call it laziness or aversion to stupid repetitive things.
Yep. Well, it's funny because I've been in the agency world for 10 years, recently sort of retired from that. But a lot of people I know that listen to this podcast are in the services area. And I think the temptation with providing services is finding a better way, finding a way to scale it. Because you're right, marketing services is a very difficult, notoriously difficult thing to scale. But if you incorporate technology to get it to go there, it can scale, but it's different, right? And I think that I remember talking to you, and you talked about how you had services and you had a software, and how you need to choose one of those in order to succeed.
Yeah, we're a software company today, but I started out as a services business.
Was it an easy switch, or was it a hard one?
I think the grass is always greener. So like, when you're a service person, you're like, oh man, I wish I didn't have to deal with these nutty clients or something like that. You know what I mean? But there's challenge that comes with scale as well. They're just different challenges.
Mm-hmm. And so in the software business, I know your software is unique in that it tries to imitate services in a little way or some way, and say, provide the value that a service can provide. And it seems like you've been doing that all along, is like, okay, the data is the important thing. If I can process it like how people think, and try to turn it into more of a human language, I can do more work and get more done and get paid more than the average person, or than other people. Do you also have like partners that you work with for services, or how does that piece work? How do you make sure that people are doing what your software tells them to do?
Well, we've got onboarding and training that happens when you sign up to be a customer. We also work with thousands of agencies that, rather than having like, very expensive guru master PPC person, working on the accounts, they're able to hire kind of lower, like more normal people to manage a higher number of accounts at scale. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Using the tool. So we'll train like those people as well.
Yeah. So basically using the training and the education in order to sort of have that perpetuate itself too. If you can, doing it as your own agency is one thing, but getting other agencies on board, or, hundreds of agencies, is really a way to scale what you're doing. And so as we go through this, so obviously the company's doing well. There's a few things that I wanted to ask. One is, I remember at the Hero Conf a couple of years ago, 2014, they had said that you have written several books. So I wanted to ask you about that. I know that they weren't, or what are the books that you've written, and how long was the process to get to that point?
Oh gosh. So I wrote books about 10, 12 years ago. They were on software development, like using like Java and object-oriented programming and database drivers. And this was a big deal, 10, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I did all my undergraduate research on Java as a kind of a server language. Like previously, it was used primarily as a desktop kind of
Mm-hmm.
like a Windows kind of application building tool.
Yep.
How did I get involved with that? It was just like a technology that I was very excited about. I worked at that's interesting. I worked at a product company that had connections to some publishers, and so that's how I got into that. It's kind of It's kind of funny. I kind of consider that to be big part of my job these days. It's just like blogging and doing research. But that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of just a side project as well. Back when I was getting started in a software engineering.
Yeah, it's interesting because the reason why I asked that is because I think that Larry Kim, as a author, blogger, personality, is sort of, where probably most people that see your name know you from. So obviously you're doing a lot of work now in building that out. I just didn't know if the other piece had helped you out, if it was just like getting the experience out of the way, so now when you write, you sort of can be more clear with what you're doing, or if it was just so unrelated that it maybe didn't apply.
When you write a book, it's like, I don't know. It's probably as difficult as giving birth. I'm not sure, but I'm just guessing that it's probably this similar difficulty level here. And so you're basically working with an editor who, a tech editor, and there's like English editors. So they just really put you through the ringer, and they mark up everything, and there's like 2 passes, you know what I mean? So it's just murderous. And I think, if anything, I don't think I've generated a huge fan base or following as a result of those books, but I think it just taught me how to write.
Yeah, which I think is an important thing. Writing is a extremely valuable long-term skill for everybody, right? And so the sooner you can get into it, the sooner you take the plunge, whether it's writing an official book or even just starting a blog, the better off you're going to be long-term, I think, with your prospects.
I think I have 3 skills. So it's the technology, like programming and analysis. It's marketing in terms of trying out and being able to measure and do campaigns. And then there's just like a communication blogging skill. So it's kind of having different, like I was saying earlier, you have to kind of position yourself at the intersection of different skills. Like plenty of marketers can't really produce content well. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So if you can, position yourself at the intersection of two or more of these types of practical skills, I think you can actually do great things.
Yeah. And are these skills, would you consider them to be learned or natural skills? The three that you just mentioned there. Did you have to learn those the hard way, or did it just come to you, or is it a combination of both?
Well, obviously, like programming and writing, you have to write a lot of software and write a lot of books. So I don't think that's natural. There is one thing though. I am a little bit of I'm always looking for loopholes. So like naturally, I'm always like, when I look at coupons or when I look at anything in life, I'm always trying to find the shortcut. Okay. It's kind of like, I feel like, the rules shouldn't have to apply to me. You know what I mean? I'm one of those types of people. So that kind of hacking mentality, when I say hacking, I don't mean like in a mean computer hacking way, but kind of looking for the loopholes, trying to exploit them. That kind of spirit is just very natural for me, and has served me well.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a sign of the best marketers that I've met, is that they're always looking for an opportunity to do more and to do better. And some of them it will just be more hard work. Some of them have that hacker mentality. I know that I do a lot of travel hacking, which is sort of a way to get more value out of your travel. And that's sort of like the same thing, is like reading the loopholes, figuring out the ways you can do it, and just being resourceful. I think that's another skill that gets you really far here, is to be resourceful in order to do it. And you have the ability to write code, which, I mean, writing code, let's just face it, it opens up so many more doors than just about any other skill that's out there. If you can figure out how to code it, and you can bring your own scale, even if it's a proof of concept, and then you hand it over to your wonderful engineering team, that's where most people fail out of the gates, is that they have good ideas, but they can't do it themselves. And so they have to invest money in a coder. They have to go in and maybe learn how to do it.
And it's not exactly what they had in mind. And it's like there was, all these, and you end up spending all this money that you didn't have. It's a bummer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, it's not for everyone, but yeah, I think, software engineering or I studied electrical engineering. If you have kids, I would definitely, I think it's a great lifestyle, great skill to have these days.
Yeah. So, question for you. How much time do you put into the content marketing piece of it? Is it like half of your time or all of your time? How much goes into that?
I'll do one or two pieces a day. So that's 2 to 4 hours maybe of work. And I'm also doing all this research stuff. So like, I don't know, right at this moment, like right at this time, I've got a couple pieces of research that I'm working on. One is on Facebook ads, like on video ads, like how to drive the cost per view to like half a penny or less. And I'm working with like some company. It helps to have lots of clients, because you can kind of find the perfect client, you know what I mean, to try out a theory on. I'm also doing some research into click-through rates and how that impacts SEO rankings. So like we have this theory that if you raise your click-through rates organically, Google will reward you with kind of bonus ranking, so it's a combination. There's a lot of ideas, and like 50 ideas that we're trying out, and maybe 2 or 3 of them will produce interesting results, and that's going to be what I'm going to blog about next week. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's actually my next question. Is you have 50 things you think might be interesting, 3 of them turn out interesting, and then you decide to write about those. It takes a lot of time. It must take a lot of time, unless you just have done it so many times, to put this out there, though, right? Like you do the research, but then to summarize it and to put it in the point where it's legible and formulating the thought, that seems like it just take weeks or months. I think that's where a lot of people fall short, is that they bite into these projects and then it never ends, because it's like, what are the conclusions here?
Well, I think you have to. I think you have to do a lot of thought on the topic generation before the writing. Okay, so it's just usually. It's surprisingly, it doesn't take much time to write up something. I kind of just say, it's almost like talking out loud, like just
Hmm.
as you would explain it to someone on a podcast. Like we didn't do a rehearsal for this podcast,
Yeah.
so you just kind of as though you're talking. So that shouldn't take too long. I think the leverage is that I do a lot of topic research. So like, what are the hot topics today that would be very interesting, and what are the best practices that I could blow up and turn on their heads, that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll just do one last question, and that is, what advice do you have for somebody looking to get into the world of marketing? Like, what would you tell them if they were just getting started?
This field is remarkably easy to actually do the work on your own. Like, so if you're interested in social media marketing, well, then you should absolutely have like, your Twitters and your Facebook and Instagram, and have like an active presence, so that you can show a company like, see, I know what I'm doing here. Like you don't need. There's not a huge bar to entry, even in paid search. Like where there is a bar to entry, that is like, it might be hard to spend $10,000 a month on an account if you didn't have that money. Basically, what I would do is I'd volunteer my services for free to a company and say like, can I help you with like pay-per-click reporting or some kind of like those kind of junior entry-level tasks that are kind of no one wants to do but are very, very important nevertheless. Those are kind of things that I would do to get your foot in the door. Also spend time on Twitter. There's a lot of like, this industry is remarkable in that people share a lot of information. It's not like people hiding all the secrets of how to do well in marketing. It's like it's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's like a race to see who can give away the best stuff. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
generally, I mean, unless you're in the business of coming up with new stuff, like unusual new experiments to try, there's generally, if you're just executing campaign ideas, there's probably no shortage of ideas to read.
Yep, absolutely. The information's out there. It's just how much time you want to put into it and what you want to do about it. I think a lot of people are short on experience and overwhelmed by the possibilities. I think that what you're doing is you're boiling it down to say, hey, even if you have to do it for free, people are willing to give you experience. There's other people who are overwhelmed. If you can contribute to them, make their lives easier, then you're going to get those chances. And then once you have the chances, it's up to you to sort of choose your path, because there's many paths you can take in this area. It's going to keep on growing as long as the economy is growing, as long as the amount of data that's available to us is growing. We're going to have opportunities.
Or just one other idea. People, if you're starting out, encourage you to pick two areas rather than focusing on just one. Because I think the different marketing channels, whether it be like email marketing or social media marketing or Facebook ads or SEO or content marketing, like they're definitely converging. You know what I mean? Like it's becoming more cross-functional. And so to the extent that you can be a little bit, understand your silo very well, but also be able to do some other abilities.
Yeah, almost like a T-shaped marker.
Yeah, that's
or some. Yeah, exactly. Well, great. That's really helpful, Larry. I really appreciate you giving us some time today, and it was really cool to learn and hear your story, because I knew that you had this journey, but I had never heard it in this type of format from the beginning to the end. So it was really, really insightful to hear that. And I think I have some ideas for myself, and I know that the listeners are going to get a lot of great ideas for themselves as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jeff. It's always great to chat with you.
That's 2 episodes in a row now talking with people who are managing Google AdWords. And that's awesome if you're entering this industry and just looking at what can AdWords do for you. But being able to see the two paths side by side was also really revealing. Both Larry Kim and Melissa Mackey from our 17th episode got their start in Google AdWords around the same time, as long as, assuming that my timeline is correct. This is back when PPC was the Wild West, and they both worked to make it easier to manage and more profitable running Google AdWords campaigns. Larry decided to take a path of bringing technology to the industry and used his background to bring him to WordStream, a profitable and growing business that is successful by any measure. Melissa chose another path of success. It just proves that there's many ways we can go in order to find career fulfillment. But one thing that is key here is that they both got started in an emerging area and the time was right. These same opportunities aren't there in the world of paid search right now that they were there 10 years ago. And as you could hear Larry say, things have changed quite a bit, and he's had to roll with the punches and grow up as he went along. So while I encourage everybody to make sure you understand the value of AdWords, I think it's also important to know that if you're looking for greenfield opportunities, you should look into emerging media, emerging platforms. We saw this 10 years ago with AdWords, 5 years ago with Facebook. These ad networks were young then, and there was a lot of opportunity, and now they're thriving. They're finally getting into their stride. So instead of focusing on those areas, I also encourage you to look at what is the next ad network that has the same type of Wild West opportunities where you can learn a lot, get paid to do it, and bring in a lot of different opportunities. So just food for thought. I think that AdWords, Google making $70+ billion a year is very important. Facebook well on their way to recreating Google's success. But what's going to be the next one out there? Is it Instagram? Is it Snapchat? What is the network that's out there? So make sure that while you're giving time to learning what's valid in the marketplace right now, if you look for the opportunities that both Melissa and Larry had, some of it just comes down to being there when these things were in their early stage. And so that's my final thought for today's episode. For show notes, visit jeffalytics.com/Larry, and I look forward to our next episode.
Does higher CTR of the organic results improve SEO score? Have you ever found a loophole in the system that you tried exploiting more? Join the race about who can share more on a website. Think about the topic before you start to write. A degree and job from 9 to 5 can surely help you pay the bills. For bigger bucks, go place yourself at intersection of two different skills. Hire smartest people, don't be too frugal, and you may end up managing 1% of Google.